Good day everyone, my name is Joyeronti Comfort and this is Group 3 seminar presentation. On today's presentation, we're going to be examining ethical issues in media management, exploring all the controversies. Ethics, as we know, is a philosophical study of values, morals, and rules. Ethics answers the basic questions of what is right and what is wrong. It is what shows us what is moral and what is immoral. Sometimes ethics can have to do with you deciding what is wrong in a particular situation or what the best decision is in a particular situation. Everybody, including you and I, at one time or the other, has to make some decisions, and it is ethics that guide us in making this decision. As media persons, in the process of discharging our duties to our society, our audience, our advertisers, there is time we are faced with situations that we have to make a very important decision, and in making this decision, we are bound to go against our ethical rules. So this is mainly what we are going to talk about. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Victory Ositadima, and today we'll be talking about the three basic concepts around which our presentation will be revolving. And now there are three major concepts which include ethical issues, media management, and ethical issues in media management. What then are ethical issues? Ethical issues is a situation that can either be moral or personal. Now, this situation requires the application of basic ethical and moral framework by which we can apply judgment or we can direct a course of action. Now, ethical issues are a set of principles that guide the behavior of humans and organizations. Now, ethical issues are basically concerned with good and bad, right and wrong, and just and unjust behavior, forms of behavior. And ethical issues arises when a situation demands moral principles to be considered, evaluated, and applied to determine the right course of action. It is when we want to determine a particular course of action to take, that is when ethical issues are now concerned. It involves choosing between competing values or priorities, where the decision can make a huge impact in individuals and on society. You see, ethical issues are all around us, and they present conflicting courses of action that often diverge based on different worldviews and conflicting ideologies. Sometimes, our ethical issues are simply based on a trade-off between two good but different options or two bad options, in which case we have to choose the lesser evil. Examples of ethical issues include abuse of power, discrimination, bribery and corruption, favoritism, and a whole lot of others. The second key concept we'll be talking about is media management. Now, media management is a business administration discipline that identifies and describes strategic and operational phenomena and problems in the leadership of media enterprises. What this basically means is that media management is a study that focuses on the management of media organizations, including newspapers, magazines, radio stations, television network, and online media outlets. Now, media management contains several functions. Some of those functions include strategic management, procurement management, production management, organizational management, and the marketing of media enterprises. Now, on to the final key concept of this presentation. Now, we're talking about ethical issues in media management. Now, ethical issues in media management refers to those challenges, those concerns that are related to the responsible and ethical management of media organizations across the globe.
Welcome back. On the issue of ethics, now we're going to be talking about the ethical issues in media management and the controversies. I'm not going to go deeply into it, I'm just going to list it, and then my other members are going to go deeply into it and explore it. Now, what is ethical issues in media management? Ethical issues in media management are the problems, the issues, the conditions, the complexities that involve in the discharge of journalistic duties, and these duties involve your duty to self, duty to advertiser, to the community where you operate, and of course to your media organization. The ethical issues in media management include: 1. issues of conflict of interest. Another one is issues of truth and accuracy. Another one is issues of bribery and brown envelope. We also have another one, which is issues regarding privacy, issues regarding violent content, issues regarding sexual content, issues about confidentiality of sources, and many more. My other colleagues are going to dwell more on that.
My name is David Amarachi Grace, and today I'm going to be talking about some of the ethical burdens that are controversial in media management in Nigeria. One of that is the brown envelope syndrome. Now, what is the brown envelope? The brown envelope is a metaphor for bribery and corruption in the Nigerian journalism system. This entails giving or receiving gratifications in form of food, drinks, money, or sex to journalists or media practitioners in return for favorable coverage. Now, this is one of the cankerworms that are eating deep into the Nigerian journalism system today. Over the years, there have been a lot of controversies and arguments over bribery and corruption in media management in Nigeria. One of these is its impacts on objectivity and impartiality. We see that when journalists or media practitioners accept bribes from higher ups in return for favorable coverage, it impacts on their ability to report events impartially and favorably. Instead of prioritizing the public interest, they report favorably to please those who offer them bribes, and this impacts on their ability to report fairly and accurate news. Second controversy or argument we have over bribery and corruption in media management is erosion of public trust. So when media practitioners accept bribes from people, the public is no longer able to trust them because the public sees them as a cheap tool of blackmail that can be bought over with any amount of money, and because of this, the public lose their trust in them because they feel like if they don't have the money to buy them over, they get marginalized and critical issues may be sidelined, leading to impartiality in news coverage. Thirdly, there are legal and professional consequences. Now we see that when media practitioners accept bribes, they could face serious legal consequences, which could include fines, criminal charges, and other penalties. In some cases, they could lose their jobs and even have their licenses revoked. Then finally, another controversy is a tension between the need for journalists to earn a living or to satisfy their financial desires and the need for them to uphold ethical standards. We all know that in Nigeria today that journalists are not really well paid, so most journalists may be tempted to accept bribes in order to fulfill their financial desires. Now, one of the case studies we are going to be looking at today concerning the brown envelope syndrome in Nigeria is the case of Nduka Obaibena, who was the publisher of this day newspaper. In 2015, Obaibena was arrested on charges of misappropriation of funds and bribery and corruption. The special task force under the Goodluck Ebele Jonathan administration were investigating to know how the office of the National Security Advisor shared funds meant for fighting of Boko Haram. Now they traced 650 million naira into the account of Obaibena, which was sent to him from the immediate past National Security Advisor Dasuki Sampo, who was charged with the misappropriation of over $1.9 billion.
My name is Udo Adama Francisca, and I'll be speaking on conflict of interest. Every journalist obviously has personal interest, a personal life outside of work. Conflict of interest comes into play when these interests, these things that we are participants of, stand in line or stand in the way of us executing our journalistic duty. Just like we see in real life, in movies where police officers having ties to cases are being cut out, journalists should not be allowed to review cases or stories that they have interest or ties with. Conflict of interest can come in two forms. It could either be in companies that they have invested in, companies that they have shares in, or another example could be when these individuals or reporters are part of political payrolls. The obvious truth is he or she wouldn't want to say stories that smear their images, and in typical cases like this, these stories will be cut or modified in order to portray these individuals or company in a positive light, because they know if a negative light about these individuals or company goes out, their interest will be at stake. In conflict of interest, we have several controversies, and one of which is advertising and sponsored content. We all know that every media organization needs inflow of money to stay afloat. Without money, the business or the media organization will definitely crash. And the major form of money that media houses need to stay afloat is advertisements. These advertisements are sponsored by certain individuals or organizations, and typically when stories come out regarding these individuals or organizations, especially negative stories, these stories will not be aired because it will tarnish the image of these advertisers. And if it does that, they will obviously not want to remain in that organization, because the purpose of you being under their payroll is to portray them in a positive light. And because of this, the independence of the media house is thwarted, because these reporters will be stuck. Should they please their advertisers, or should they follow their journalistic principles and uphold objectivity and fairness? Another controversy is political participation. These reporters most of the time follow or in support of a particular person or political individual. So typically they will choose news stories that revolve around that person. They will find facts and figures that supports that person, and their news story would focus on that person instead of being broad and objective, covering different areas. External financial interests can also be a controversial issue to reporters, in the sense that some reporters have investments, they own shares in some certain companies, corporation, organizations. When news report comes out surrounding or regarding that particular organization, these reporters obviously would only want to send out good and perfect images of this organization, because they know that their finances is included in the organization, and if anything goes awry or wrong, they will be affected negatively. This would affect their news story. This would affect how they send out their news stories too. Personal interest and bias can also be a controversial issue and can also lead to conflict of interest. This is because a media person who has close ties or relationship with the person being spoken about, he or she would be biased and won't give an objective view or story regarding that individual. A good example portraying conflict of interest is when a Nestle company, who is the major investor paying for an advertisement in an organization, a media organization, is involved in a controversial issue. Would the media organization want to say the truth, uphold their duties, and be independent, be fair, be objective, and say the story as it is, at the expense of losing their sponsorship? Or would they support or modify the story, fitting and supporting Nestle at the expense of stopping their journalistic principle?
My name is Ogechukwu Maduka, and I'll be speaking on sexual content under ethical issues and their controversies. People tend to be especially vulnerable towards media portrayal of sexuality. Psychologists actually noted that teens and children find more information and their opinions about sex through TV, online media, and films. 2/3 of adults also turn to the media when they want to learn more about their sexuality. Although the media helps in shaping teens and adolescents to have better attitude towards sex, it could also lead them to engage in the activity before they even know how to handle the consequences. Moving on to the controversies under the sexual content. Firstly, we have objectification and exploitation. Concerns may arise when media content such as advertisements, movies, music videos, when they portray individuals and objectify them solely as sex objects. This could lead to harmful stereotypes. This could also increase culture in exploitation, and this could also lead to undermining their dignity. The second one under this controversy, we have age appropriateness and child exploitation. Media content that includes sexual themes, especially when involving minors, could cause a huge concern, because the exploitation and sexualization of children can cause severe ethical and legal implications. And for the third controversy, we have consent and boundaries. Consent is a very, very, very critical consideration when dealing with media content. In this case, sexual content. Should know and be aware that all the parties involved in creation and dissemination of sexual content must have consented their involvement, because the violation of boundaries can raise serious ethical concerns. The fourth controversy, we have cultural sensitivity and diversity. The portrayal of sexual content should respect cultural norms and values. Media organizations should know the beliefs and the backgrounds of the audience they are putting out their media to, or their media content to avoid perpetuating stereotype and also engaging in cultural appropriation. Lastly, under the controversy, we have media regulation and freedom of expression. Balancing freedom of expression together with regulating content will continue to be a challenge to the media organization. So governments, regulatory bodies and media organizations grapple with determining appropriate standard, age restrictions and guidelines to ensure protection of their audience without infringing on the rights of freedom of expression.
Every media practitioner and also media organization should make sure they present accurate coverage of facts and figures before it is publicated to the audience. Let's delve into the controversies over concern over truth and accuracy. The controversies are the ethical issue that arises in the process of journalists and media practitioners doing their job. One of it is false information and misinformation. Due to the rapid spread of the digital media and social platform, false information can now easily find its way into the public domain. It could range from deliberate misinformation campaigns to unintentional dissemination of inaccurate facts. Now, these false informations highlight the need for media practitioners and media organizations to verify their facts before it is being sent out to the public, as one of the major ethical duties of media practitioners is duty to the audience. The second controversy is political bias and partisanship. I will read. Accusations of political bias in media reporting have become common, with different outlets being accused of favoring particular political parties. Now, this is a very major issue in Nigeria as a country. Now, this is a very major issue in Nigeria in particular, as major media organizations during political campaigns or elections, whatever political propaganda that they tend to favor a particular political party, either because a member of that political party is a major sponsor of the organization, or the organization is owned by a very influential person who is a member of the political party or the government. Now, this can erode public trust and integrity in media organizations and personnel. The third controversy being sensationalism and clickbait. Sensationalism is the act of portraying your news to the people in a way that it will evoke strong emotions in them. The emotion could be fear, rage, excitement, happiness. Now, media practitioners instead of publishing news that are of interest to the people or that will benefit the audience or the public, they tend to publish news with eye-catching headlines that will help them attract the audience attention and also the attention of influential people and sponsors. They do this in order for them to bring their organization to the limelight in form of a way of competing with other media organizations, showing that theirs is better. The last ethical controversy is unverified sources and anonymous reporting. This has caused series of ethical dilemma between media practitioners because they are left to the choices of protecting their sources and keeping them anonymous, making the audience question the credibility of the news. In essence, the concern over truth and accuracy has caused series of controversies between media practitioners in Nigeria over the years.
We'll be addressing ethical concerns over privacy. A major concern when it comes to ethical issues over privacy is the public right to know and individual right to privacy. So that what it means is that whether or not journalists should gather news so that the public is aware of these stories, or they should protect individual rights to privacy. When in gathering news, journalists give special considerations to certain category of people, like victims of sexual violence, juvenile crime offenders, and a whole lot more. The controversies concerning ethical concerns over privacy include use of private data. This example becomes important when it comes to investigative journalism. Whilst covering news, sometimes investigative journalists may have to impede on individual rights to privacy. They have to give the public information that is accurate and stories that are newsworthy. This becomes a major controversy because sometimes the ethicality of whether or not news stories should be factual or protect individual rights to privacy. Another controversy when it comes to privacy is the issue of trespassing by journalists. In gathering news, sometimes journalists might have to trespass on the properties of individuals in order to bring to the public news that is factual, accurate, and newsworthy. An example when it comes to ethical concerns over privacy is the famous Anita Hogan case. This story happened in the then financial hub and capital of Nigeria, Lagos. The PM News, an afternoon paper, in order to sell more newspapers, decided to splash on their screen a nude photograph of Anita Hogan, the famous actress. This photograph, the publication sparked questions and arguments by the public whether or not the newspaper was practicing its right to freedom of expression or they were impinging on Anita Hogan's right to privacy. Another example of an ethical concern over privacy is the famous Doyin Adebusi of Daily Trust newspapers and the famous Odedola Bridge Fire case. Whilst covering and reporting this news, the journalists published pictures of the victims without their consent. This sparked another controversy between the public and the newspaper concerning whether or not the newspaper was expressing their freedom of press or impinging on the rights of the individual victims.
My name is Ucho Fojama Raymond, and I'm talking about the relevance of ethics in media management. For what my colleagues have said, we can know that ethics simply means the wrongness or the rightness of an action. Ethical codes are guidelines that tells media practitioners what and what not to do while carrying out their professional responsibilities. We all know that without rules and regulations in a society, there will be anarchy. So without ethical codes, there will be unlawful and unethical and harmful journalism practice. So this statement will lead me to my topic of discourse, which is the relevance of ethics in media management. The relevance of ethics in media management is truth and accuracy. Ethical codes encourage media practitioners to uphold truth and accuracy in reporting. They should ensure that stories are true, that stories are real, that stories are not fictitious, and they should ensure that the figures and the facts are accurate to avoid misleading or confusing the public. The second relevance of ethics in media management is public interest. Ethical codes tells journalists that while making decisions, they should consider the public interest, the interest of the public in making a decision. An example is a situation whereby a journalist has to choose between publishing a negative story about a political candidate that will best inform the public to make their decision in the election, or not to report the story. At that point in time, they need to have the public interest in their heart to know that, okay, this story is going to be proper to publish the story, so that will suit the interest of the public, that is in the best interest of the public. The third relevance of ethics in media management is privacy and dignity. Ethical codes tells journalists that they should respect the privacy and the dignity of individuals while covering and while reporting stories. It sets boundaries, telling us what and what cannot be published or reported about a person's life. For example, stories about a person's medical conditions or family issues can face privacy invasion charges. The fourth relevance of ethics in media management is plagiarism and copyright infringement. Ethical codes tells us that we should respect the intellectual property of individuals while reporting stories that someone has another individual wrote. It is advisable to give credit to that individual to avoid falling victims of this plagiarism and copyright infringement. The fifth relevance of ethics in media management is journalistic independence. The ethical code tells journalists to be free from external influence that will prevent them from carrying out their responsibilities properly.
My name is Vanessa Okafor, and I'll be speaking on situation ethics and situation ethics as a free-form solution to addressing ethical controversies in media management. Situation ethics is a consequentialist ethical theory that focuses on the outcome of actions rather than the intrinsic rightness or wrongness of those actions themselves, as in deontological theories. This theory suggests that there are no absolute rules that govern human behavior. Instead, Situations are evaluated based on their merits, and decisions are made based on the best interests of those involved. At the core of situation ethics is the idea that there are no universal moral rules that can be applied in every situation. Joseph F. Fletcher, an American theologian, developed situation ethics as a response to the shortcomings of absolutism and relativism in ethical decision-making. In his seminal work, Situation Ethics: The New Morality, Fletcher outlined his framework as an alternative to both the view that moral principles apply with no exception in every situation, as well as the opposing perspective that moral judgments are dependent on contextual factors with no overarching norms. Fletcher proposed that the only absolute in ethics is love, and that loving one's neighbor as oneself should be the guiding standard as to which the rightness or wrongness of an action is determined based on the unique characteristics of every situation. Fletcher proposed that there are 4 key principles that should guide situation ethics, and these 4 key principles are pragmatism, relativism, positivism, and personalism. The principle of pragmatism entails that for every situation, what should be applied is what is deemed to be the most effective and most practical for that situation. Next is the principle of relativism. Now, this principle entails that there are no absolute ethical rules. Instead, right or wrong is dependent on the context of every situation. Positivism entails that judgment should be made based on practical evidence and logical reasoning and not abstract theories. And for the last one, the principle of personalism. This principle entails that the primary consideration for every decision made should be how that decision impacts or respects the individual involved. And now, moving on to situation ethics as a free-form solution to addressing ethical controversies in media management. Joseph Fletcher's situation ethics has proved to be a useful framework for addressing ethical controversies in media management. Fletcher argues that the only intrinsic moral norm is love, and that every ethical decision-making must maximize love. This approach focuses on circumstances and consequences of actions rather than rigid rules. This flexibility can help navigate complex issues in ethical decision-making. And now let's consider the solutions of situation ethics to certain controversies. Regarding privacy, Fletcher said that intrusions can be justified if they promote love and well-being. However, extreme invasions that degrade human dignity are unloving. As such, the solution of situation ethics to the issue of privacy becomes that media outlets must prioritize public interest and benefit over any individual harm. That is to say that if the release of a particular information will be of most benefit to the public, that release of information should be prioritized over whatever harm such will do to the reputation of the individual holding such information. On the issue of children's programming, Joseph Fletcher's situation ethics emphasizes the need to love and nurture young children. That is to say that some matured content may be appropriate for older minors, but content that are detrimental to the development of younger minors should be considered unfit and unloving. As such, media outfits must consider the development appropriateness for children when putting out content for them. And lastly, for sexual content, Fletcher considers whether it promotes love, intimacy, and meaningful relationships. Gratuitous and exploitative depictions that degrade and objectify humans fail this test. However, portrayals that foster emotional connection and mutual respect may be ethical, but the context and manner of representation should be considered by media outfits.
In conclusion, after exploring all these issues in media management, all the ethical issues in media management, it has come to our understanding that there is no how we can faithfully follow these rules, or there is no how we will not be found wanting in one or two of these issues while discharging our duties. We have to know that as journalists, we have responsibilities, and these responsibilities is one to our community. It is important for us to hold on to this rule and follow it to the end. Another one is that we have responsibility to ourselves, to our conscience, whatever it is that we are doing, whatever decisions that we are making, we have to make sure it is one that is right, even if it is not the utmost right.